Hello, everyone, and welcome to CodeCast by STL Tech Talk, where we're going to bring you the content you want and need: instructional, informative, unique, and insightful commentary on programming and technology. My name is JJ Hammond, and I'm joined tonight by two coding experts. Up first, our guest. He is the president and co-founder of TrackJS, a freelance web developer and an agile team coach with over a decade of experience building information systems. Also, he has built large enterprise systems, complex software products, and launched startups. He is a veteran of software conferences and an international speaker. He holds a Master's of Science in Management of Technology from the University of Minnesota. He lives in Stillwater, Minnesota, and with his wife and children. The undisputed champion, Todd Gardner. Hello, Todd, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure, sir, and thanks for being on. Also, this show is not possible without my returning champion, fellow co-host, striving to bring development knowledges to the masses, and has spent the last 20 years architecting and implementing highly scalable ASP.NET applications, our very own Gus Emery. Hello, Gus.
Hey, JJ. Todd, thanks for joining us. Even though you're just across the city from me, I'm glad you could electronically join us tonight.
Right. It's a little different than the last show. That was San Francisco all the way to here, so that was a thing for sure. And don't forget, everybody, you can follow us on Twitter, hashtag CodeCast or at STL CodeCast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. So that's STL Tech Talk. YouTube channel for all those watching. Or you can watch these CodeCasts live or catch up on the ones you've missed directly on our site, stltechtalk.com, for more information. Also, you can find tech news, podcasts, codecast, programming code, hands-on reviews, event coverage, and much, much more. And don't forget, you can interact with this show by sending us feedback to contact@stltechtalk.com. And if you're watching us live, you can ask us questions via the chat room, and we'll do our very best to answer those questions in a timely manner. Special thank you goes out to David Hathaway from Xamarin, our last show guest. Did a phenomenal job, so thank you so much. And also, while I'm thanking people, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of the show, Inertia Software, creating cutting-edge, highly scalable Microsoft technological solutions to the energy industry. Visit inertia-software.com to see how they can help you today. Also, Tech Systems. You want to advance your IT career, but you don't want to submit to hundreds of resumes to online job boards in the hopes of finding your next job? Your solution is simple. Tech Systems is the leading IT staffing provider in the U.S. and is ready to be your career partner. Their goal is to help you achieve personal and professional success, so contact your local recruiter today at techsystems.com/STL or call 314-819-1117 for more information. So thank you so much for being sponsors of the show. We greatly appreciate it. And without further ado, let's get to the reason why we're all here tonight and talk to Todd. Todd, how are you? What brought you into developing TrackJS?
I'm great, and thanks again for having me on the show. TrackJS is really scratching a niche, or an itch that I had myself, where I've worked on a lot of large JavaScript client-side applications over the last 4 or 5 years, along with this JavaScript renaissance that's been happening. But in every one of the projects I was a part of, we always needed a way to understand when we deployed this application out and our customers started using it and they started interacting with it, it would break in all kinds of weird and unpredictable ways. And one, we were lucky to even know if it happened, and then two, how do we fix it? We were usually developing, the new version of whatever platform we were building, and so making sure that we were developing it with high quality was a constant problem. And so I'd build a simple implementation for our first client that would record some basic information, and then I move on to the next project and I do it again, the next project and I do it again. So about 18 months ago, I got together with my co-founders and I pitched them the idea that, hey, maybe we could build a service that everybody could use, that we could bring to all of our projects, that could just be a drop-in way of understanding how these rich client-side applications that we were building, how do they break, and how do we know how they got into these bad states so that we could fix them. And so that was the original problem that we were trying to solve with TrackJS, is this easy way to understand how a client-side JavaScript application breaks and what to do to fix it.
Right. Well, I got to say, it's an awesome site, as well as it scales very well, so you're doing things right on that, and that's for sure.
Thank you very much.
What inspired you to create TrackJS?
Well, collectively as web developers, we're moving more and more of our logic out to run in the browser.
Right.
5 years ago, we were doing almost all of it on server-side languages, and we have great mature tools to know how our servers break. Right? There's tons of monitoring and logging tools available, and you get an exception, you know how it happened, you know what version of Java or Ruby or .NET that you were running, and it's all good. But with JavaScript, we're deploying a code that we don't entirely understand and we don't entirely control. JavaScript is this crazy, wonderful, powerful, and terrible language all kind of rolled up into one, and we build applications that we don't entirely understand and then deploy it out into web browsers, but we don't control those web browsers. There's several different implementations of JavaScript interpreters running across different browsers, and each of those browsers could have invasive plugins or a new version that gets released. And so all kinds of unpredictable things when this code that we don't fully understand meets a browser environment that we don't control running in a network and browser environment that the user could be changing and network latency affecting it. So there's all this unpredictability happening, and we didn't have any good tooling available to understand when that broke. That was like what was inspiring us, is like, how do we solve this? How do we make that better? And
it's a big problem. I mean, and just the different versions of those browsers.
Definitely.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things was when IE 11 released, which was not that many months ago, and they changed the user agent string in IE 11 versus earlier agents of IE, and many of our customers were actually doing browser detection based on that, and that caused breaking in their applications because they were thinking it was IE, but IE 11 wasn't reporting, so it was going down a different code path, and unpredictable things were happening. So just because we're not developing an application or your project team isn't actively developing doesn't mean that environment we're deploying to is stagnant. A new version of Chrome and Firefox and IE is going to come out like every month. And when a new one comes out, does your app still work?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Gus, you're up.
Yep. So tell me, what does the architecture behind TrackJS look like? What kind of languages are the core of this?
Sure. So TrackJS is built on the .NET stack, and we're hosted in Microsoft Azure. We had a couple of different big scaling problems we had to solve building out TrackJS, where we have the JavaScript library that we include with our customers' applications, and that was fine. We have some really interesting stuff that happens there that listens and logs events. But then all of our customers, all of the visitors to all of our customers' web pages are sending us data, and that can be a lot of data at certain times a day, or if there's particular issues happening. So we had to have some advanced store and forward and delayed processing algorithms. So we have a front door server that captures the initial error and does some very simple analysis, and then pops it into queues for later processing, and we cycle through it and process those errors in. On the back end, we store most of our data in Elasticsearch, which has been fantastic for us, actually. We used to actually keep a relational system in the first revision of our product, but we found that it just couldn't keep up with the both insertion and reporting needs that we had for our data, and Elasticsearch has kept up with that very, very well for us.
Can you explain what that is?
Sure.
I've heard of it before.
So Elasticsearch is a document database, but it's built on top of Lucene, if you're familiar with so the string searching and that sort of thing.
Nice.
So it runs on the JVM, but we set up Elasticsearch introduces the concept of an index, which sits on top of Lucene shards. And an index, you put documents into it, and then you can do all kinds of very interesting searching, filtering, and faceting on those documents. So for example, I can say, hey, tell me all of the errors that have this message, and then give me the counts of those by their browser that sent them in. And it can return that information very, very quickly. Like, I don't have to create multiple indexes across the same data. I can just set up my document structure once, and it gives me all of these great analytics for deep reporting and inspection of our error data.
Right.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. So what is your main development background? Are you a JavaScript person, or are you actually a .NET person originally?
Well, originally, I describe myself as a bit of a polyglot. I know several different languages.
Okay.
4 years ago, I would have described myself as a C# developer.
Okay.
Okay.
And it was a series of projects that kind of happened along with the JavaScript renaissance that pushed me into JavaScript. And I've at this point, I almost describe myself as a JavaScript developer first.
Okay. Yeah.
I know a number of back-end languages, but the major thing that I feel I know the most is JavaScript. And so
that's a good that's a good thing to know. I'm not gonna lie.
Right now,
We talked about that a little bit before the show. It's like, hey, not everybody likes writing, but everybody's got to deal with it.
Right. If you're a web developer, you might be writing Python or Java or Ruby or .NET, but everybody's got to write JavaScript. If you have any interactivity that you want to put into the browser, it's really the only game in town.
So what kind of issues and errors that gives you the most errors that you found with TrackJS?
So there's two big ones that generate the biggest volume of errors, but I'm not sure how entirely helpful they are. The first is script error. And script error is the browser's doing the security check. Is some script that was loaded from a third-party domain generated an error. And to protect data leaking out of that script, the browsers anonymize that data and just release the string script error. And we actually get a lot of these because a lot of people include third-party scripts either to load them quicker from the CDN, from a Google CDN, or they're including advertising or social widgets on their page, and those scripts load from third parties. But you get some benefits on doing that of you defer control and loading of those scripts, but also hides when they break. And so a lot of times we'll just hide those errors. We give our customers the option to say, hey, just don't show me script errors. There's nothing I can do about it. But it's still a valid error that's happening, and it represents probably the biggest chunk of errors flowing into our system. The second is from web crawlers. So web crawlers have started executing JavaScript. All of them have, in fact. Google's, Bing's, and the Baidu Spider. But they execute it in ways that we don't completely understand. It's not executing the pure V8 engine under the covers. And so the errors that are being thrown from it aren't easy to debug, and we're not really sure how much they impact your SEO performance. So today, a lot of our customers are just hiding those until we have better debug tools. Those two aside, which are kind of non-errors, the biggest issue that in general the community has problems with are loss of context, which basically means when the function executes, this isn't what you think it is.
Right.
That manifests itself in thousands of different error messages, but that's kind of the core messages. When things happen in a different order, you might lose context.
Okay, makes sense.
Very interesting. Yeah, Gus.
Yep. So one of my other questions actually is, what's the licensing model for your product? See it.
So we license it as a subscription service. So being that we host all of the infrastructure, we need to scale that infrastructure with the data that we're receiving. So we price our system or our service based on how many hits your website receives.
Okay.
And I feel that that's actually an important distinction because a lot of people, their first inclination will be to price their system based on errors. So like every error I send to you will cost me more money, kind of thing.
Right.
But I feel like that creates like a weird, dangerous counter incentive, right? Because as the service provider, I want to help you fix your errors. I want you to get to zero. But when you get down to zero, I feel like I've added a lot of value to you, to your company, to your business, to your site, and I want you to pay me a lot of money in exchange for that value. So we bill based on hits, is that the more errors you solve, the more popular your site will be, the more you will grow, and we hope to grow with you. That, and we also need to plan capacity of, hey, you have 10 million users every month. I need to plan that in case something happens and you encounter a major error, I have the infrastructure in place to handle those 10 million visitors sending me errors all of a sudden.
I agree.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been kind of a burning question for me, and I'm really excited to hear your answer on this. Is what are your thoughts on web apps and their evolution? Are web apps the future of cross-platform development? Why or why not?
I don't know that I can be your Nostradamus and tell you one way or another because.
Oh, come on! You got the beard. You got the beard and everything. Come on, you can at least try.
There's interesting dynamics happening here. Is that the web is becoming a more capable platform. with ES5 and ES6, and a lot of the work that Google is doing to add more capability into the Android Chrome browser, you can do more with HTML5 apps than we could before, and the tools are getting better and they're getting faster. But there's still a lot of layers of abstraction that are hard to remove. Is you still have this layer of JavaScript interpretation and the DOM to deal with that are sitting on top of a web browser that then need to interact with the native code on the device itself. And so you have to solve or find ways to mitigate a lot of the problems of performance that happen on just a web browser. That if you go down the native route, you don't have those problems, but you have a whole different set of problems. You have problems of fragmentation. You have problems of the devices themselves, their APIs change as they release new devices. And so I have to build one version of my app for iOS, and I have one version of it for Android. And there's tools out there that are trying to solve this. Xamarian is great, Accelerator is great, and they're trying to find ways to make that happen. But both the native side and the HTML side are continuing to grow very rapidly because the whole market of the mobile web is growing. But I don't know which one is going to win. A major change has to happen in one side for, I think, the balance to tip. I think if the mobile device manufacturers, if they commonized a platform or an API, they all wrote in the same language or the same general idea, I think that would totally take over and all right, that's the way we're going to do it.
Almost like a standard, just making one thing a standard. Yeah. Okay.
On the other hand, if we could get all the browsers to get on board with ES6 and even maybe some future things to get more control, get the browsers on the mobile clients to have tighter integrations with the native, that could completely change the game on that side and everybody move over. But there's these, unfortunately, it's not a technology constraint that's going to happen. These are all markets and businesses that are fighting for this, and whichever is able to, make the right deals and build the right kind of cooperation among the different companies involved, I think is going to win. But you can't exactly get Apple and Google to sit down and agree on something.
No. I mean, they'll on purpose break that stuff to make you have to go out of your way to.
And even if you got those two on board, you still have to convince Amazon and Microsoft.
Sure. Yeah. Because now, Gus, what's your thoughts on this? Just real fast before we hop into the show and tell. You're muted out, brother man.
Sorry, guys, I had a fan go off here, and I muted it to make sure it didn't come across. What I was going to say is that I'm not a Nostradamus either.
You have a beard too, though.
I know.
I know. I try. I'm in red, at least, right? No, but I'm not sure. I know we're going to see a lot more web. I know we're going to see a lot more mobile. I just don't know what the next future is because I'm starting to see more and more call for desktop applications as well. So I'm really tossed up. I really am. I'm not sure which direction we're going. That's why I like to ask everyone. I want to be the dumb kid in the room sitting in the corner learning everything.
Well, at the reason why I bring this up, and I have literally 2 minutes to say this, which is at the most recent conference I was at, Strange Loop, there was a lot of focus on web, and there was a lot of focus on the ability to push down to these devices different things, and especially with more being able to distribute to more devices and the web being more ubiquitous, I think, and services being needed to be rendered to so popular news outlets or whatever the case may be as are moving away from this model I've noticed of direct native application development and just like a web wrapper, if you will, and writing to a more web presence because that's where you're pulling the information from anyways. So why not make that more of a a seamless experience and an experience that you can bring across different devices, like people who switch from maybe iOS to Android and back and forth. So that was just a really interesting dynamic that I always want to explore with our guests because that is a future thing, and that's kind of what people are into is kind of look, where do I go, where do I put my time, and it's a good question to be at. So let's go ahead and get into the demo for this evening. So we'll go ahead and Todd, if you want to get that up and running, what do our listeners need to know about what's going to be ran and what are you demonstrating this on and all that?
So I'm running a local version of TrackJS, just because in presentations, I never trust things happening live in production. I have a couple of demos set up that illustrate different features that we have in place. Just kind of want to walk through that, and feel free to ask questions if I'm not being clear along the way. And then if we have time, totally up to you guys, I could do a live install, so we could set up TrackJS on a simple web app and show off some of the things we could do.
Okay, we're going to make time, because that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds cool. Let's do it.
All right.
Yep, let's do it.
So here is an error that, can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Here's an error that we have captured from one of our customers. So there's a lot going on the screen. We've captured a lot of information. But the core thing that I want to draw your attention to is that we didn't just drop an error and a stack trace on the page. Because in JavaScript, in this asynchronous client-side thing that we have built, the error itself isn't always that valuable. We see a lot of very obtuse messages like E is undefined, scripts.js line 1, and I don't know what that means. I don't know how to fix that. Our code has been minified and run in weird ways in production. I don't know. So we instead choose to focus on the steps that the user, the network, and the application took to get to an error state. So what we're showing here, what we call the telemetry timeline, is saying, hey, when the DOM was ready, the first thing that happened is your console printed this message. So one of the things we do is that we wrap console.log, info, warn, all of the console functions, and we make it safe for you to use in production across all the browsers. I know most JavaScript web developers will have used console log and probably have accidentally shipped code that had console log in it, which unfortunately has disastrous side effects when it's run in old versions of Internet Explorer, where console.log isn't a thing and the whole app blows up until you open the debugger, and then it works fine, and you're like, I have no idea what's going wrong. But we feel that having console is an important idea for debugging. It's in a server-side language. You have print line debugging. You add logging statements throughout your code to show you the state of your application at different times. And so TrackJS gives you that for JavaScript applications and say, hey, go ahead and ship your code with console messages in it, and we include them with error reports. So the first thing that we see happened is, hey, your application printed that the customer session was active. And then an AJAX call was fired to the API and fetched some data. We know that where that AJAX was fired, it took 900 milliseconds before responding and came back with a 200. The application responded with saying, hey, everything is loaded, and the user, 7 seconds after load, began interacting with your application and entered 16 email characters into this input box. Now, I only know that it's 16 characters long and it matches an email pattern. I don't actually capture what the user input was because I don't want to deal with data privacy concerns. We don't ever want to deal with accidentally having credit card information or password information in our systems just because we don't want to get into that personal identifiable information problem. So we know that 16 email characters were entered, and then that the user clicked this submit button, and that was the last thing that happened before this error occurred. So from that, we can infer that this was probably triggered as part of the submit callback. That these are all the steps needed to recreate that problem. Now, we also captured some general information about your application when the error occurred. I know that this user is a Firefox user. They're running Firefox 21 on macOS 10.10.9. They were on the registration page, and their timestamp was 9:23 at 5:56. The real timestamp was 9:23 5:56, so it looks like their clocks are in sync. They were on the page for a total of 15 seconds. Here was their IP address and how big their viewport size was. Now, these are all just interesting pieces of information for troubleshooting different kinds of bugs. Viewport is important because often if we're building a responsive application, we'll have different parts of JavaScript that will execute at different screen sizes. So understanding that's kind of important. And a lot of calendar bugs I've fought in the past have the root cause has been a difference between when the user thought it was and when the actual time of day that it was. We also track the other JavaScript libraries on the page and their versions. So maybe one of your pages has an old version of jQuery and you're just referencing the incorrect version. So this particular customer also provided some custom information about their application to us. So we know that when they're viewing this error, this was the version of their application that was running, and they provided an ID for their customer that was running it. So we can traverse it and filter our errors by that and see, hey, this huge customer, oh, session timeout.
Well, it's secure.
So this customer, these are all of the errors that that particular customer encountered during that time. So we can see that, hey, they tried several times over a few minutes to hit this registration page and they kept failing. So our customer can go in and see this and contact their customer and make sure that they get their problems resolved. I'd actually like to show you another one of our customers. This is a customer called KidBlog, which is a startup in the Minneapolis area that provides software for teachers. And one of the things that they get out of us is this dashboard. So our dashboard is this top-level roll-up of interesting data about how your client-side application is performing. So we track information about, hey, for every hit to your application, how often is an error generated? So they're giving you kind of a score of how you're doing. So they're doing pretty good. 0.06 is really low for what we found. Even the best applications we've ever seen always have some errors. There's always some unexpected situations that are happening. And then we track how fast they're coming in and a difference of how you're doing today versus yesterday. So they're improving right now. Their errors are dropping right now, despite the number of hits we're seeing increasing. So they're getting to be more popular, and yet their errors are dropping. So we track the information by day. We slice it in a bunch of different ways. We could drill into this day and see that, hey, there's only a couple of errors happening that's dominating their list. They have an undefined error. This is that context problem I told you about, where something was not there at the time that it executed. A 404, one of the error conditions that we're able to track is, hey, maybe your AJAX calls just are failing for whatever reason, maybe your proxy is down. You can customize what AJAX response codes are valid error conditions, and we'll report those of how did that AJAX call come to be done. And then we roll up some top-level things of saying, hey, here's the browsers, pages, and messages in your application that are generating the most noise right now, so that you can feed this information back into your development or support work and say, hey, these are the areas that are impacting sales today or impacting our users in whatever way. And you can do that without waiting for these customers to like call your support line or tweet about you or something like that. You know the errors happen at the time they occur, not when a customer reports them, if you're lucky enough that they even report them. So one last thing I'd like to show here, which I think is before we get to the demo, it's something that we recently introduced around stack traces. So one of the cool things that TrackJS does is, even though stack trace isn't the entire picture of an error in JavaScript, it's still important context, because JavaScript is a really terse language, and the error messages themselves are not all that obvious. And so having this stack trace is really important context for us to, as developers, to debug what's going on. So TrackJS does some unique things about how we wrap the core browser API, and so that we can catch callbacks being passed into the browser and catch errors that might emanate off of them. And so we're way more likely to capture a stack trace than a web browser is by itself. But because JavaScript is asynchronous, stack traces are kind of an incomplete picture. So if I look at this stack trace, I don't really know anything about what's going on here. Something has started in the tracker, which is our script, or something was initially called by the tracker into some code that I don't fully understand, eventually dying on get style. But I don't know how to debug that. Chances are this has had something to do with a callback, because very little JavaScript code is executed initially. Most of it happens in response to some event. And so we introduced this concept called a bind stack. So what that looks like is, so you have to activate that with our configuration. So there's like a real simple configuration block we provide, and when you turn that on, we'll capture this bind stack, which is a deeper stack trace across what happens. So we'll understand what was the execution stack of JavaScript at the time a callback was bound, in addition to when it threw an error. And so it lets us look back across time and see how different execution stacks led to each other. This is essentially the same functionality that Chrome released in their latest version of their debugger with the async stack function, where you can see previous execution chains. So if we activate this and see what this looks like in an actual error report, is we see here's that same stack trace we had before. This was showing the execution at the time the error occurred. But I know that this callback was attached about 13 seconds before. And 13 seconds before, here is what was executing. So it was executed as part of this unknown thing, as part of bind click handlers, a bunch of other anonymous things as part of initialize. And this gives me a much clearer picture of how to look at this. In the initialization of the application, at some point, bound up their click handlers to respond to different user events. This executions chain started from a click handler that was bound on line 28, column 297. This gives us a way better idea of how to look backwards through our code and understand deeper problems. So that is like the core features functionality I wanted to show. I'd like to show you how easy it is to get this up and going in an app. So we could do a little demo. So here is a real simple application, a trivially simple application. So I have some HTML markup. All it really has in here is a button. And then I have an application object. And all of this is just vanilla JavaScript. We operate at a very low level of the browser, and so we work beneath all major like MVC style frameworks. So we work in Backbone, Angular, Ember, React, Knockout. We have customers using them all. We've even been embedded inside of mobile apps in the App Store. So this application is just straight up vanilla JavaScript. And so I have an application object. That application object has an initialize, which binds up a click handler to the clicking of this button. And then because we're talking about error handling, that click handler blows up. So if we just take a look at what that looked like, I have a button, and when I click it, it dies. If I open up some debugger consoles, I see, hey, reference errors, undef is not defined. So this is the error happening. And if this is actually happening out in production, how do I know? So I want to go and install TrackJS so that we know. So we go out here and we sign up. There's just a few pieces of information we need to know to sign up. Hope I typed everything right. All right, so we're all created. And TrackJS tries to take us through a little tour, but I just showed you a tour, so we're going to skip that right now. Installing TrackJS is like really, really easy. Like a lot of developers I talk to are just way overthinking what's necessary. We take this little script. This script is our JavaScript tracker. And here's all the information you need. Here's the token that represents you as a customer. And we're just going to take that script, and we are going to paste it here into our simple application. Save it. And now when we interact with our application, check this out. Error. TrackJS caught that undef is not defined. We go back to our application here, our TrackJS application, and take a look at recent. Check it out. I captured that this happened. Oop. I captured that this happened. I know that at 7:38, a Firefox user on Windows 7 interacted with localhost port 3000 and got undef is not defined. And that happened as they were clicking this button with this ID. It was running TrackJS 2.1.1, and Crypto 2.4 was on the page, which is just part of Firefox default. I can see all this other information about it. But maybe I want to dig deeper. I want to get some more context in here. So if we go back to our application, we can add some more stuff here. So we can go in here to console and say, hey, my application is initializing. We can instrument our application with console logs. And then the next time we trigger this error, we see it show up here. Now we have additional context of this console logs happening. Now that's really cool, and it's good context, but if you have the debugger console open, you see all of these messages printing out here, and that might not be cool. You might want to hide that information from your end users. So we give you the opportunity to customize the TrackJS behavior in a bunch of interesting ways. One of them is by turning off how the console works, or changing how the console works, as it were. We can paste this little script, which we call our pre-initialize block, into our sample here. So right before our script, we're going to say, hey, we're going to configure TrackJS to not display console messages. If we take a look at our application now, when we click the button, notice that none of our messages were actually printed to the console. None of the debugging statements we added. But if we go into TrackJS, they're still captured and they're included as part of error reports. So now we've added hidden print line debugging functionality to our error report. Now we have a stack trace here, but this stack trace isn't all that helpful because all it really includes is that onClick function. And I know onClick was executing, that's obvious what was happening. But how did onClick come to be bound as a function? So now we can activate that bind stacks feature. So if we go back here and take a look at callback, we can add this property here of callback bind stack true. We'll stick that on our application config. And now if we run the sample and we capture an error, now we have the deep stack trace. And that stack trace, we know that here onClick died. onClick was bound about 1.5 seconds before the error happened. And it was bound by wrapping this function up as part of initialize, as part of executing main. And I can look and see how every line of this code compares to our original application right here. I can see that main, which was executed right here, called initialize. Initialize bound up an add event listener as part of our wrapping. And that blew up here. And I can see that I can trace the entire backlog across these asynchronous events.
Wow. That was gorgeous.
So now we have, now we've installed TrackJS on a simple application in like 2 minutes. We've added some custom debugging statements and we've hidden them offline. There's a ton of other information you can do to get deeper. You can add a custom on-error callback to change the behavior of when errors will send in. You can catch an error before TrackJS transmits and either manipulate it to add your own custom data to it, or maybe you want to like not send errors in a particular way. So you can catch that and do that. You can also change how we serialize objects. So often a console log statement will include an object that you're trying to log. And we need to serialize that so that we don't generate a memory pointer and lead to leaks. But how we default our serialization is just by calling toString. And so you'll probably want to do something a little bit more intelligent than that by calling either JSON stringify or your own custom stringing function. And so we let you attach those sort of things. We also let you attach all kinds of custom information like I showed earlier, including maybe the user ID from your server side. Like maybe you want to know that, hey, this is user Gus, and Gus's session ID is 12345, and the version is 1.0. When we include that information and track an error, Now we have all that information tracked here. You could use a session ID to correlate this back with your internal logging applications. And like I was showing earlier, you can now group all of Gus's errors together. So I can click on Gus and say, hey, here's all the errors that he has experienced. So I can see how well did Gus think interacting with my application was. So that is installing TrackJS in a nutshell.
Wow, I mean, you know, the speed in which all of this is happening is just amazing. I mean, you've made it so fast and responsive to what you're doing. Was that like your ultimate goal? Was it like, say, I don't want a millisecond to go by. I want it to just be already done.
So are you talking about just the responsiveness of the UI or how fast an error appears in the UI?
I want answers to both.
So as far as the UI is concerned, both speed and simplicity are important. So TrackJS is bootstrapped. There are 3 of us running it, and we've been running it for about a little over a year at this point. And so to pull this off, we had to really focus on what is the core problem that we're solving and not solve non-problems. So that has driven everything that we have done. We've focused, we've tightly focused on giving the most information we can possibly give you about an error and how to fix it when it happens. And so a lot of the parts of our UI are intentionally simple. We want it to be fast to load, but we also just didn't want to build a bunch of stuff that people didn't need. And so everything that you see in the UI is there because somebody needs this information in order to debug. That this is valuable, that people have asked for it, that customers have been willing to pay for it. And so that has driven it. In terms of how fast data comes into our system, I am very happy on how fast it came in. That depends on how busy you are as a particular customer. So if you are sending us a whole lot of data very, very quickly, your errors may not be quite as timely, as our processing algorithms will offer some delay so that they can catch up and not overload our system. If you're a huge customer and you're sending errors at 100 a minute, you might not have them right away. But for smaller applications and definitely for getting started, you'll see them within 5 to 10 seconds.
And I love how easy you made it to be implemented inside not just browser, but we're talking about the applications themselves: iOS, Android, Angular, Safari. You can run it on all those, i.e. Firefox, Chrome. You know, you're not only hitting just the web, but you're also hitting the devices too. So that is really awesome.
Absolutely. We've actually offered some custom guidance recently where, so here in our documentation, here's like a way to get more information from Angular. So if you just drop TrackJS on an Angular app, we give you tons of information. It's great. But Angular handles stack traces a little differently than JavaScript does by itself. And it injects the stack trace as just the message property of an error, which causes like some noise in our UI. And so we offer this little snippet, which allows a way for you to configure an Angular application to better integrate with TrackJS and pass the Angular exception object directly into us, which we can parse. We've also built the same thing for Backbone, which will automatically inspect and wrap all of your Backbone types and add wrapping and exception catching to them. We're working on these same sort of deep guidance for React and Ember now. We'll get those out in the coming weeks. But because we operate at such just a normal low level of the browser, we can plug in, and anybody who's basically running HTML5, we will work in. Like I said, people have built wrapper applications and stuck us in the App Store. We're installed on a pretty popular game that I can't talk about. I can't give its name. That sends us a lot of errors, and they're all from iOS, just sending it to us from their mobile application.
Wow. Wow. Well, you have an amazing product, and it looks like this thing could really take off, and I really hope that it does. Couldn't happen to a better guy. So we want to direct people to, if you want to find out more information, trackjs.com is where you want to go. Now, looking at it, you have a blog up here where people, you can sign up. Some really great information right on the site. Now, who did the development for the site stuff? I'm really curious about that, just because I really, really like it.
Oh, thank you. We did it ourselves.
Okay.
One of my partners in TrackJS, his name is Nick Pelton. He does the majority of our UI design, and he is phenomenal. He has another company that does design, branding, and website development services called Westwork, and they do a great job. And we're really lucky that he wanted to join us at TrackJS and help this thing not look like it was written by a bunch of developers.
Oh my God! Oh, that was good.
We are creative people, but too often the development tools that we write looks like plain white pages with Times New Roman font.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could have. It might as well have just been a green, OS2 applet thing. The other thing that's really cool at the very bottom, it says "proudly built in Minnesota." It's completely unnecessary to put that in, but I love that kind of stuff. I mean, it's attention to detail, and I think it's really unique, and it kind of speaks to how awesome, and just kind of the extra step. We always talk about that in the development, especially when people are hiring or when you're getting a project done. It's the extra fun things that you do to make it awesome, and unique and just kind of different. But God, man, I love the way it's laid out. So you guys did a phenomenal job. And again, if you guys want to know about pricing, it's very, 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 very competitive pricing, meaning that it's solid. You're not going to overpay. I don't believe so.
The pricing that we're competing with here is developer time. That's what you're paying for. Is how long would it take your development to troubleshoot and fix a bug? And if we can save you like an hour a month in debugging, TrackJS more than pays for itself.
Yeah. Also, 30-day free trial, no credit card required. Come on.
Bam.
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's easy.
At the very least, turn it on today, fix as many bugs as you can in 30 days, and quit. I mean, I'd love you to stay, but I'd also love you to just fix a bunch of bugs and make the web better.
And honestly, they're gonna, they'll come back. They'll be like, you know what? I did kind of use you a little bit. I left before you were awake in the morning, and now I'm back to, apologize, take you out for dinner. So, that's so, those are the kind, but they will come back. I mean, and I think this is really a solid product, and I believe in it. That's why we're having you on, and awesome. So, for more information, again, go to trackjs.com. It's a real easy to use interface, and also works really well on the mobile experience. So just really well done, sir. Really well done. Transitioning to the next part of the show, which is we always ask, or at least Gus does, but I'm going to do this because I can do those sorts of things. What do you do away from the keyboard? What are some of your passions? What kind of drives you to keep going?
So I have a wife and 2 kids. And
okay, never mind. Then that takes care of it. I'm going to go ahead.
That takes it right there. So and we all collectively very much enjoy Legos. So it's nowhere near like the level that maybe a Scott Hanselman takes on it. But we have a fair number of Lego sets that we go through and build and play with, and that's kind of our thing. Have you done any of the Lego robotics yet? I haven't. So I have a 3-year-old, and the robotics is just a little too advanced yet. Yep. So I hope to work up to it, but we're trying to do it as a family, and so I don't want to like push it too far. Gotcha. So what's the most advanced Lego piece that you've built so far? Well, we did so we have what's it called? The haunted house set from maybe a year ago. It's in like 2 rooms over. I'm not going to abandon the video for that long, otherwise I just
sure.
But it's a really cool like Victorian haunted house that opens up, and there's a ton of like secret passageways and stuff inside of it. That's pretty awesome. Sweet. And then my personal is I still have an old pirate, the Lego pirate ship, the Barracuda with the red sails from like 1984. Wow.
I remember seeing pictures of that back when they called things magazines and newspapers.
Yes. Well, I have one of those up on my mantle, and it, guests will come over and they'll be like, why do you have Legos up there? You should have like something fancy there. I'm like, that is a Barracuda pirate ship. That is like,
excuse me, sir. Awesome. That is awesome. You just back yourself right now. You check yourself at the door.
This is my house, and we promote Legos here.
Right. You need to stop, rewind, and I'll give you another chance to relive the last 5 seconds of your life.
Yeah, one of our other partners, Alejandro, usually has something behind him that he's building in Legos that's massive.
Death Star. I don't remember the name of the battleship, or no, what do they call those? What are they?
Destroyers. Yeah.
Destroyers. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's got one of those. Like, and it's not a small one. No, it's like, you know, this big, and it's behind him. It's hilarious. But yeah, so that's really cool, man. And I like that you say good family time, because some people are like, you know, I need to get away from him, or I'm gonna, you know, take him out. So that's really cool, and I think more people need to be engaged. Now, one of the things that I always worry about if I was to have a kid is I notice a lot of kids do the exact opposite of what their parents are into or what they want to do. You know, Kevin, my business partner, his son could care less about this stuff, and I'm like, oh God, why? You need what? You know. So does that, you know, play into that? I mean, is that, you know, I think that's what you meant by, like, I don't want to push that too far?
Yeah, so that's a very good point. I don't want to push it, because if I push it and force it, they're going to rebel against me, and then they're not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'd love them to go into computers and programming and that sort of thing, but if they don't want to do it, you know, that's, you know, it's their choice. So
you say that now.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
when my oldest goes to college and says she's going to go get a philosophy degree, and I'm like, no, you're not.
Oh no! Yeah. I'm going to give you a chance to stop and check yourself and rewind the last couple of seconds of your life.
Yeah.
So we asked this question also to our guests. So which of the following you can choose from? What do you see as the next technological niche, or how do you see technological changing in the next 3 to 5 years? Or a betting person, what technology do you see booming next year? Or pick 3 current technological items that you see going extinct.
So yes, we're asking you to become Nostradamus again.
Exactly.
That's only an opinion.
So
it's only, yep.
So the thing that's going to happen in the next 4 to 5 years is, and I'm sure this is really cliche, and probably everybody says this, it's around Internet of Things and home automation. I think that's gonna blow up. But I think we're still really, really early. I think there's a lot of disruption happening, and it's really only like the super nerds who are like building their home automation things.
Right.
But there's like some really cool companies building for them, like Spark Devices and Smart Things just got acquired by Samsung, and so there's like some really cool stuff happening.
With like this here, like a local Emerson, you know, right down here, West Fullerton, down in St. Louis, they make a thermostat that's controlled Wi-Fi. You know, it's a Wi-Fi thermostat, remote access from smartphone, tablet, or PC.
I could use that.
Really? Because I have like 5 of them, so I'll
send me one.
Yeah. We need to do the giveaways on it, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, so yeah, you're right. I think that does kind of speak to the geeks, and you know, I think it's going to throw the curve off a little bit for data, because you're going to have these guys who really care about the inside of their homes, because that's where we spend most of our time. So there's going to be a lot of interaction there, where I think the normals are going to.
Well, so that's the real market potential there of, I think, why it's going to blow up when one of those companies figures out how to make it appeal to the normals.
Yes.
Do you think it's like a wearable, or do you think I
personally don't like wearables. I'm just not that into the whole wearable thing right now. I don't think there's as big of a market potential. I think Internet of Things, with regard to home automation, could be huge, but I think there's this big obstacle of how do you get Joe average homeowner to care. But I think it feeds directly into a lot of important problems like climate change and power consumption and. And so if you can figure out the right way to put the right devices into your house that can really turn off heating and cooling systems, and turn off lights, and lock doors, and detect moisture problems, and correctly water your lawn. And if you can find a way to do all of those things in a package that just anybody can drop in their house, and the right incentives are in place around costs, I think that whole market could just blow up in a very rapid time frame.
Right.
You know, I tend to agree with you. Last week I was in Vegas and I stayed at the Aria, and the Aria has a tablet for every single one of the rooms that you walk into, and it literally controls everything. When you walk in that door, your curtains open, your TV turns on, all of the lights turn on, everything is completely automated from that tablet or by the pieces themselves. And in fact, earlier this year when I was at Knoxville, I think I was at Holiday Inn or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But you had to stick your card key inside the door into the wall in order to be able to turn anything in the room on. And that was their green piece, right? Unfortunately, the desk clerk says, "Oh, well, our building's green, so I'm giving you 2 keys so you never have to turn your room off." But
oh, well, that's counterproductive, isn't it?
The point still is that I think you're right. There are those companies that are trying. I don't think anybody's hit it out of the park yet.
That goes back to like a whole industry, right? Well, where it used to be like people who would remote into your PC, and people still do this now, but it's definitely not to the magnitude that it was, maybe 5-10 years ago. People are going to just be able to, oh, I need help with my home automation. Well, I'll take care of that, sir. Just give me your IP address and blah. Okay, that's going to be terrible. No, so that's going to be interesting and probably a whole other thing in itself. And I think, Gus, you kind of hit it there. And both of you a little bit, and I think that businesses more, because it starts with business, right? It becomes ubiquitous. You get used to using it at your work or your place of business, especially if you're a manager or something. You're already doing those sorts of things. You bring that same knowledge with you home, and if there's a type of standard that we keep talking about, or at least I do, that can be written to, then that everybody can kind of get on board with. And I think, like you guys said, it'll be kind of knocked out of the park, and that is a different take. So it's not a cliche. It is a different take on some of the home automation and connected home things that we've talked about in the past. So very cool, man. Thank you. But that was a good talk. So charities you should all know about. Hope Line, it's a domestic violence prevention program support organization for Women's Safe House, Safe Connection, Schumann Water. So if you want to donate all of your old shoes, go to schumannwater.com and you can find out more information there. They help bring battery-powered water filtration systems to developing nations to bring them, drinkable water so they can actually take showers and drink water and things like that. The important things. Hope for Young Adults with Cancer. That's hopeforYAWC.org. That's a good group. Or find a local charity in your neck of the woods and donate to them, because that kind of stuff's important. So, Gus, tell people where we're going to be, because I'm looking at the announcements of the week and I see that we're both going to be at the same place. So why don't you just tell people where we're going to be?
For the first time in 1 year.
I know.
We're in the exact same place.
Right.
St. Louis Days of .NET. Talking about .NET things. I know we also have a pre-con this year. Yep. We've got 8 hours of building a cool app that you can bring out. There'll be more details on that coming. But there's going to actually be quite a few of us doing this, so it's going to be a pretty interesting, chaotic session. If you're not in the audience, you're going to miss something definitely interesting. I can tell you that.
Flippantly. So that's the St. Louis Days of .NET. Registration is open now. You can get the early bird, I still believe, pricing. So go to STL Days of .NET for more information there. And make sure you sign up. Make sure you go. Make sure you sign up for our pre-compiler sessions. It's gonna fill up fast. Todd, do you have any announcements you'd like to for our guests, or excuse me, for our audience to know about?
Sign up for TrackJS.com.
Sold.
Help a developer live in and break out of building software for the man and software for the web.
There you go. And so Todd, where can people find out more about you and what you're doing specifically, you?
I'm pretty active on Twitter. My handle is Todd H. Gardner. I tweet angrily about JavaScript sometimes.
Oh, sure.
I've been meaning to set up a blog forever, and it's just never the top thing on my priority list. So I can't even give you a URL.
You know what? I bet I could find a company that would track all your JS for you.
All right. We could take care of all of that. Nice.
For a measly little... No, I'm just kidding.
I love it.
I think I could work out a deal for myself.
That's good. I hope so.
Yeah, that's always one of those weird situations where they're like, hey guys, we made something I'd like to use, so
I just sold myself an unlimited.
Yeah, so sorry. Just tell that to the finance guy. What's a widget? Tell that to the bank. It doesn't matter. That's an old school movie. Everybody should go check that out. It's hilarious. So Todd, thank you very much for being on the show. Gus, thank you for everything that you do, sir. What a wonderful show. It's great to have you back from all parts unknown. So
it's great to be back. Believe me. Believe me.
Sure it is. Todd, so thank you again for being on the show. And to all of our fans, we love and thank you for your support of the show. So from the entire STL Tech Talk crew, good coding. We're out.